All right, today we're going to be talking about shotguns. Specifically, we're going to be talking about what the biggest mistake is that I notice in my lobbies. This is something that the best players already do and have been doing for a while, but I've noticed that many of the players in my lobbies don't tend to do this for some reason. Also, I want to say that I've had a ton of questions asking if I have a Discord server, which I do. It is my clan Discord server, so keep that in mind. But everyone's free to join, and the invite link is in the description below. With that out of the way, let's get into it. Shotguns have always been dominant in PvP pretty much since Destiny 1. Because of this, Bungie has repeatedly nerfed them over the years, the most recent of which has really reduced their effectiveness and their range in the Crucible. The shotties we have today are really shells of their former selves. And why do I bring all this up? Well, that is because like 90% of the shotgun players I run into in the Crucible don't seem to understand this. Many of you still run in straight lines or zigzag around at me expecting to just one-shot me at like 10 meters. Shotguns just don't do that anymore. I know it sucks, but this is the number one problem I notice most shotgun players have. So today, I'm going to be talking about how you can compensate for this problem and how many of the best players in the game do so. Now, many of you who are better players will already know this, so I'm sorry if this isn't new information to you, but this is something that I notice the vast majority of shoddy players don't do, and that is putting in chip damage before using your shotgun. So what do I mean by this? Basically, you need to be able to swap between your primary and your shoddy fluidly in a fight. You can't just run at people with your shotgun anymore. Any good player will counter this. So what you need to be doing is using your primary first to prime your target and then switch to your shotgun to finish them off. You'll notice the very best players do this almost exclusively when shotgunning. If you watch a tournament or a high-level scrim or just even very good players using a shotgun, you'll notice that this is something they do a lot. I also want to point out that this is probably best done with a hand cannon as your primary, so that's part of the reason why hand cannon shotgun is such a popular combo amongst the best players. Basically, you can do this with any primary, but the reasoning for a hand cannon is that you just have to tap the trigger once and it's instant damage, whereas if you have an auto rifle or an SMG, something like that, you'd have to hold down the trigger for a while and it'll take a bit to do that burst of damage that a hand cannon does. Now, obviously you can still get away with just one-shotting people without priming them if you get close enough. However, better players will not let you do this. Another thing I want to point out is that doing this is the best way to beat other shotgun players specifically. When you run into a shotgun 1v1, a lot of times this is the best way to sort of get the upper hand against the other player. And the reasoning for this is that when you are able to prime someone with your primary and then immediately swap to your shotgun, you can actually kill them with your shotgun from so much further because they're already missing some health. If you do this correctly, it really costs you nothing, and it sort of just extends your shotgun range by that much more. And what I mean by it costs nothing is if you're just sitting there waiting for them to get closer, or if you're pushing them trying to close the gap, it'd be so much easier to just use that time to just hit them one time with your hand cannon and then just switch to your shotgun. Especially if they're pushing you, there's really no reason to stand there and wait for them to get closer so that you can shotgun them. You might as well just use your hand cannon and then swap to your shotgun and shoot them from further away. That way you don't risk dying because you'll be outside of their one-shot range. Another thing is you don't always have to prime people with your other weapon. You can always use a melee or a grenade, but obviously those could always be on cooldown. So I'm just using primary as an example because you'll always have ammo for that. Basically, the point I'm trying to make is that you don't want to be trying to shotgun people who are starting at full health if you don't have to. Sometimes you will have to, there's nothing wrong with that. Shotguns can still one-shot up close. It's just that they're very inconsistent, and putting in damage like this will sort of reduce the randomness and the RNG that the pellets have. And the good news is that doing this isn't even that hard necessarily. It just takes some practice, and you sort of have to keep it in the back of your mind. Like, you need to sort of start thinking about this if you're not used to it, that you need to start practicing to put in some damage before you go in with your shotgun. Also, this works really well defensively. I think the best way to play shotguns is in a defensive play style. So a lot of times people will be running at you, and I think that's the best way, is just to put in some damage and then switch to your shotgun. Also, I know a lot of shotgun mains who have been complaining about the most recent nerf specifically, but to be honest, I've always shotgunned this way where I put in chip damage first, so really this nerf hasn't even affected me that much. I don't really notice it because most of the people I'm shotgunning are already low health anyway, so it doesn't really make that big of a difference. Obviously, I still feel it, especially when I do try to one-shot someone, because sometimes you need to do that. A lot of shotgun kills are still from full health, there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't really notice this recent nerf because I always put in chip damage first when I can. So that's why I'm making this video, is basically since they've been nerfed so much, you have to sort of start to adjust and play this way if you're not used to it. You're not going to be able to just one-shot people from so far. It's just shotguns are not consistent anymore. So you need to sort of adapt to that and start to do it this way. So that's all I have for today. Like I said, many of you may already know this and do this consistently, but I swear in my lobbies I never see anyone doing this, so I think the vast majority of the player base doesn't quite understand this, or maybe didn't really think about it, so that's why I decided to make this video. So from now on, I don't want to see people in my lobbies trying to zigzag around my bullets from across the map in Narnia trying to get to me, because now you know better. So as always, I appreciate the support, and I'll see you next time.